this is like the best thought exercise that I've ever really encountered about it, is like, try to think about yourself when you were a kid and you were on the playground, or you had the box of toys in front of you, and just what was the that you gravitated towards before you started to become socialized. And that's what happens, is as soon as you start to hang out around people, as soon as you start going to school, they start telling you that this and this are the things that you should be concerned about, and you start to be like everybody else, because it's a lot easier to fit in and wear the same type of pants as the other kids in your class than to just be who you are.
Today on the podcast, Adam22, who runs his own podcast, he has been interviewing rappers, very successful artists. So I feel a little bit pressure here. I got to be honest. He also has multiple YouTube channels, Adam22, and No Jumpers. So he has already built some very successful businesses. He's also a poker player. He has been playing poker since 2003. He stopped around 2007. Now 1 year he got back into it, grinding online. And yeah, of course, we're going to be talking about poker, as well as how solitary can help you to identify what you really want in life and how it has helped him. We also talk about, and this is that made me speechless. And you don't see me being speechless that often. He shares a very crucial question when it comes to a question that you need to ask yourself and someone else. And I don't want to tease it too much here. I don't want to spoil too much. But he is sharing a very practical, very important question when it comes to identifying what do you want in life, or maybe finding your passion. So very, very important, very insightful. And of course, I'm not going to share that right here, right now. So yeah, definitely check that out. And of course, much more. We talk about his failures and his learnings and tips he can share so that you will also succeed in your journey. So yeah, buckle up. That's an episode full with value, full with tips from someone who has been incredibly successful the last couple of years. So let's get right into it. All right, here we go. I have Adam on the show. Welcome so much. Listen, from all the guests I've had so far, you seem the busiest, pumping out content like nobody, also having a huge audience, being involved in so many different projects, being a journalist. I feel like you're all over the place in the media landscape, trying to succeed in poker, which is very inspiring. So I got a million questions. Are you ready?
Oh, very, very ready. And I just want to say before we even get into it that this is a very mutual relationship, because I've watched a million Bencb YouTube uploads. I copped the multi-table course when I first got into poker and everything. So, it's an honor for sure.
Appreciate it, man. I hope I didn't miss anything important that you're currently doing or that you're involved in.
Oh, no, I'm chilling. I'm excited to be here.
All right. So let's kind of kick it off, and maybe let's chat a little bit about poker. I also have some questions, or received questions about, business and your routines, and I'm always excited to hear about that, your time management. But yeah, let's kick it off with poker. What fascinates you about poker?
Wow. That's a good question. I mean, I think that I always kind of had it in the back of my head that I wanted to sort of redeem myself poker wise, because I played starting in about 2003, 2004, 2005. And then I was kind of done. I basically decided that I just didn't want to play poker anymore by about maybe 2007. I had like a BMX website that started to take off. And as soon as I had like another business that was doing well, I started to really realize that I wasn't enjoying playing poker. And I think I was a winning player for maybe the first couple of years. And then
online or live?
By like 2007, I'm pretty sure that's when everybody just started to get a lot better, and I just kind of got left behind. And when you could feel it, that everybody's sort of doing stuff that you don't understand. So I kind of like retired in like 2007, and then basically got back into it because of the pandemic.
So you got back into it right a year ago?
Yeah, I mean, I was fucking around a little bit for maybe 6 months before that, but when the pandemic hit, that is definitely where my brain went. Was like, you know what? I'm gonna actually work on getting good at this and trying to prove to myself that I can be a winning player,
Once the pandemic is over, do you intend to continue, or do you feel like being dragged back into some other projects that might not provide you the time that it requires to study the game as much as you wish to?
Yeah, I mean, I'm living in fear of that like I might have like a full weekend schedule of shit that I have to do because I mean I'm kind of an introvert that also I kind of like demand a lot of social time as well.
Wait. You an introvert?
I know. Like people think it's weird when I say that, but I just feel like I need a lot of alone time to sort of like balance out the amount of time that I spend on camera and being extremely social and stuff.
Yeah.
And you know, I very much enjoy like the simplicity of sitting on my fucking computer playing 10 tournaments all day. And there's just something that's so comfortable about that. And like being backstage at a music festival where it's literally like I'm just seeing people every 5 seconds. Somebody wants to talk to me. Some, you know, such and such rappers walking by. Like that to me is so stressful in a way, even though I enjoy it, but it's stressful.
Mm-hmm.
Sitting on the computer playing poker, listening to a fucking podcast in the background or whatever, I just feel 100% comfortable and at ease in that environment, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, we love simplicity. I can definitely relate to that. For me, probably the backstage work that you're putting in, for me, it's playing poker when I play tables and I'm streaming, and sometimes, during the week, just having a couple of hours just playing video games. It's like I can just relax. I don't need to try to be good at it. So yeah, we probably
It's like
all, yeah,
it's like an order versus chaos thing because like when
yeah.
I'm out in public, it's like really anything could happen. Is like there's just so much chance. And when you're playing poker, it's like, well, I know the worst thing that could happen to me today is that I like lose a couple $1,000s and I'm okay with that. You know?
Anything can happen when you're out there.
I saw you had a negative 70K day the other day, man. That was hard for me to imagine. But yeah, anything could happen, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you said you started around 2003 and you
Right.
stopped in 2007. Were you playing mainly online or live?
Yeah, all online.
All online?
I moved to New York City I grew up in New Hampshire, which is about 4 or 5 hours away. And I moved to New York City in 2003. And basically, like, my plan was that I wanted to just ride. You know, I've been riding BMX bikes since I was like 12 or 13. And that was just always my biggest thing that I was just obsessed with, you know? And I moved to New York, basically got like a super cheap apartment with a couple guys, and I just wanted to ride bikes every day and just film. I had a video camera. I just wanted to make videos. I just really wanted to sort of, you know, get into making video projects with all these amazing riders in New York. And I like fucked up my back really bad within about 2 weeks of being out there. And I had already been interested in poker, and I had like read this Phil Hellmuth book a couple times without actually starting to play. You know, it was like real basic strategy type thing. And I had read it a couple times. Like I was really fascinated by it, even though I hadn't played yet. And then when I got that injury, I actually like put $200 online, and all of a sudden, like the next couple years of my life are pretty much me in my apartment
Grinding.
playing. You know, I played limit at first. I played no limit. I played sit and goes for a while, even a little bit of multi-table tournaments. But I never really felt like I embraced the MTTs like the way that I wish I had around that time. But yeah, that's pretty much how I got into it.
I see. And then 2007, you felt you were not being able to compete anymore.
Yeah, well, in 2006, I, you know, just from having so much time online where I was playing poker, I was also just, you know, looking at websites and stuff. And I was spending a lot of time looking at this one BMX message board and just, you know, noticing that people were starting to post a lot more videos online, and that like the conversation was slowly starting to become about content, you know, and that everybody wanted to put a video online. This is like the first time this was really happening in bike riding history. Like I grew up buying VHS tapes and DVDs and whatnot. And, you know, that's why I'm really thankful that I was a poker player at the time, because me just being online so much gave me like a reason to be looking at that so much. And then also this was the early days of when like everybody just started blogs. Like all of a sudden you could get famous. Like if you were, you know, like I saw these guys in the hip hop world becoming famous as bloggers like overnight. And I just sort of realized like I can do that for bike riding. Like I have that knowledge. I'm an outsider to the fucking industry. So I literally just started a blog spot up, and that just became my life for like the next like 15 years, 10 years. And, it was crazy because it really changed my life. Like all of a sudden I had all these companies hitting me up wanting to advertise. And that was what really allowed me to kind of step away from poker, which at that time, I don't really think I had a healthy relationship with.
Healthy relationship? You mean with poker?
Yeah. I mean, you know how like there's people who study and play and like really are honest with themselves about their win rate and about where they're at in the game. And then there's people who I feel like it's kind of easy to like manifest your depression or your like self-hatred through poker too, if you just like sit around and just blast money into tournaments and don't really like study or don't like think about what you're doing and everything. I feel like it's kind of easy to like use online poker while you're in this like sort of depressed state, if you know what I mean. I feel like I very much like run the risk of almost like using online poker to sort of like stop me from doing other things in life. And I feel like I've kind of had like addictive behavior for it. Like I'm lucky now, honestly, that I can't play poker more than like 1 or 2 days a week. So it's like I don't really have that option to just sort of sit on the computer playing all day every day.
Yeah, you're already going a little quite deep in poker, and I have a question that might connect a little on that, which is does poker for you reveal any positive or negative traits that you might also have in real life?
That's interesting. I mean, I think that like before I started to really study and really like get better, I would definitely notice that like I've always felt like I had a little bit too much of a threshold for risk taking. Like just when I look at a lot of the decisions I made in my life, it's like, wow, I can't believe you thought that was a good idea. Like, I was doing credit card fraud and shit when I was young. I was like selling drugs for like a big part of my 20s and stuff like that. And when I look back at that stuff now, it's like, wow, you really took way too many crazy ass risks that you were super lucky to not get caught. And when I look at myself, just like feeling like I'm going to bluff every river, like I've seen myself get into that mentality of just like, just really just going too crazy, or even like the opposite of just like calling down way too crazy with ace high or whatever. Like I've definitely like noticed that in myself, and I think like studying is the only way to sort of like fight back against those bad impulses.
So you had the urge to just fight back at all costs, even though it would be a losing play, just to bluff because you saw a little chance to win some money. Or
I think that when you see yourself getting into that state of mind, that's when you can really start to identify yourself having like an unhealthy relationship with poker. When you start kind of almost like manifesting your own like ego, like refusing to give up on a pot, is like it's almost like that's when it's bad, is when you can tell that you're sort of you're making a bad decision because of your like lack of self-control or because of whatever you're going through in your mind at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. I just think that the biggest problem might be that people don't even recognize that they think actually everything is all right. And it's like, but yeah, I have everything under control, right? And they're just lying to themselves. I mean, that's pretty big that you recognize it, because I doubt that even a fraction of poker players are capable of doing it.
I had a hand that I like bubbled a final table or some shit, and I was walking around for like the whole week thinking about it, tearing myself up in my head, thinking that I made this horrible bluff. And then I showed him the hand, and he was like, no, that was great. He's like, that was amazing. He's like, you should always do that. And I'm like, oh, fuck. I'm like, I just wasted so much mental energy thinking I fucked this up royally.
Yeah, I know that feeling. Even for a Sunday grind, I sometimes for a couple of days, sometimes being overly hard on myself. And actually, it was not that bad. I think it's just an age of the game where just incomplete information is just gonna fuck with your brain. And it's just your responsibility to not let it get too close to you. Anything that where you would say that you're particularly good in poker, that you also see that you're doing well in life, is like, hey, actually this trade or this the way I see life or approach life really helps me also in poker to see things from a different perspective, or make playing poker for you easier?
I mean, I'm pretty hyped about poker right now, to be honest, just because I feel like I've actually taken the studying side of things serious enough that I've actually seen like real improvements in my game, and it's if there's still tons of stuff like I'm still just like constantly kind of going through stuff in my head. Like I feel like now for some reason I've started to actually take poker as serious as I take other things in my life, which is kind of strange because I don't really like have a reason to be so concerned with like doing well in like $100 tournaments.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just something that I really do love and just like care about so much, which I've spent quite a good amount of time sort of like wondering why I'm so concerned with poker.
It seems like to me you're, as you said, you want to redeem yourself. Is it more important for you to make money in poker or to redeem yourself?
Yeah, the money don't really matter because I don't feel like I could win an amount of money playing poker that would really like matter to me, like, or aside from having that like giant
Yeah.
$1 million tournament, like my biggest score was like this $30,000 tournament, and I mean, I'm kind of at the point business wise where $30,000 not going to really change anything, but like the validation I felt from that is massive, like that's just like I just really like I don't know, it's just something I respect like the poker player mentality so much that I just really want to be able to do the same thing that I like admire so much from people like you and BBZ,
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. But I think it goes in the mutual where when I was looking at your, I mean, you have incredible guests on your podcast, on your show, and to me, when I discovered you for the first time, I was like, this dude, he doesn't give a fuck. He just does whatever he wants, and I find it an incredible skill set in these days to do whatever you want to do, go for it, don't let anybody go in your way, and that's what you want to do. I feel like in these days, if people message me, Ben, with my parents, they don't tell me not to play poker, or a friend or my girlfriend or whatever. It's like yeah, you just have to go with it. And I think you're a great inspiration. And also for myself, I can see that when I'm streaming, sometimes when someone is making a stupid comment, it's like you should not let that to close let this get too close to you, because otherwise you just end up worrying the entire day what other people might think you. Was it something for you that was always easy for you? You just go for whatever you want. I mean, you have been, at least to me, it seems like you're very successful in so many different things, and being out there and on social media, YouTube, having crazy successful guests on your podcast.
I mean, I think that the bike riding thing when I was young really just sort of like got me into the mental framework of you can be horrible at something and then just work at it over and over and over and eventually get good at it, because I never really felt like I had a lot of like physical aptitude as a young guy. Like I needed glasses my whole life until I was in like 4th or 5th grade, and I didn't know it. And then I found out that I needed glasses, and all of a sudden I realized that I had been basically blind my whole life, And I think that had really fucked up my like hand-eye coordination and shit like that. So I never really, because I'm 6'3", and I would always have people being like, oh, like you're gonna play basketball, right? I had no aptitude for that at all. But I think like through bike riding, I really like found something that allowed me to just like work on myself of like just learning how to do this stuff. And then I slowly started to just apply that to other things. And, when I started that BMX website in 2006 and all of a sudden had like everybody in the industry paying attention to what I was saying, and all of a sudden I have all these companies wanting to advertise with me and stuff. I mean, that was the most that I could have ever imagined or ever asked for in my life at that time, because I just didn't really know that much about the outside world, like that for like a poker player who's just good at poker but doesn't really know that much about like everything else that's going on in the whole world, which I feel like would kind of describe a lot of poker players.
Yeah,
it was the equivalent of I had just gotten sponsored. I just had, all of a sudden I got $1 million in the bank and I'm sponsored and life is great. I didn't have $1 million from this fucking website, but I had everybody, like from my perspective of just being concerned with this bike riding shit, I had done everything that I could possibly imagine. And I kind of just got onto the treadmill of just doing that stuff for like a long time. And then I think around in 2012 was when I really realized like everything is moving to social media, and whether this business or whether me as a entity is able to continue to succeed is going to be pretty much entirely decided by how I'm able to adapt to this new social media world. And that's when I got real serious about YouTube. And even like, I remember I had like a bot on Twitter that would like follow like a couple thousand accounts a day and like then unfollow them later and shit. Cause I was just like, oh, I'm gonna run this bot for my fucking business's Twitter account and shit. Cause I was just so like convinced that if I just built up my follower accounts or whatever, that it would be a huge W for everything I was doing.
Yeah. What was
embarrassing now?
Sometimes we got to do the things that we think is best at that time, and later on we're like, oh, we're not necessarily proud of that.
I never bought followers. I never bought followers. I just want to throw that out there. I know there's people out there doing that shit.
Yeah. I think long term it's a very poor strategy because it just decreases the quality of your followers. Also we also sometimes do giveaways, but I don't think you should do it too much because you just get a lot of followers that just are in for some quick money, just grabbing a free giveaway, but they don't really relate with your content. So we try to not do it too often. I think it's actually quite a long time since we did it the last time. So you might have less followers, but you don't want to get followers. You want to get fans, right? That fight for you. I don't know where I read it in the book. It's someone like brought up the example of Apple. When you have a discussion with someone, it's Apple or Android. Usually it's not just, oh, you have an Android? Nice. I have an Apple. No, it's like, Apple is so much better. They're like literally defending it. It starts out of nowhere, and the Android user is defending Android. And that's what you want to create, right? Fans that defend your brand at all cost. This was a really remarkable phrase or analogy for me that, I don't care about quantity. I just want people to understand what we stand for and what our beliefs are. And I think that's the most powerful marketing strategy you can have.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. No. Yeah. I mean, what is fucked up though is like I've always really kind of looked down at the idea of people buying followers, whatever. But I've been in record labels and had record label people look me in the eye and tell me that this song that is like number one on the charts right now is number one on the charts right now because when we first got that song, we spent thousands of dollars to buy fake Spotify plays and to buy fake YouTube plays and everything to just sort of like get the ball rolling for that shit, which is, I mean, that's crazy to me that that's just like a normal thing. And I'm looking at this guy telling me this in this record label, just thinking like, it would probably be the most foreign thing in the world if I told you that what I think you're doing is wrong, like morally wrong. That it probably would not even compute in your brain that I think that but I also don't even know if I believe that. Because if it's common industry practice and everybody's doing it, like, is it really wrong or is it kind of on the user to be able to just assume that some percentage of view counts are fake?
Yeah, I think you got to do the things that let you sleep in peace at night. And I would say for the most, it probably won't. I don't know. No, and I believe in karma. I don't know. Do you believe in karma?
Not in like a literal sense, but I do think that in general, the energy that you're giving out is going to generally attract more of that energy for sure. I've felt that a lot in my life. Yeah, absolutely. Listen, you were earlier talking about when you had your blog and you had the first companies reaching out. And I can imagine this must have been a big moment. How did it feel? You're putting in so much effort, right? You're writing these blogs. How did it feel to you when the first company reached out and you see your inbox, the email, it's like, hey, you know what? We want to collaborate with you. Oh man, that was like the best. And it's crazy to think about how different that is from now, where now the path of being an influencer is so well trodden. Like, if you start to gain a following on YouTube, then you can make money off YouTube ads. You can do merch, you could do events, you can do, sponsorships with brands. It's all very like well laid out. Like in 2006, and I find myself with a popular blog. It's like, what the fuck am I going to do? I had to like pay a web developer to basically like create a backend from scratch that would let me manage these ads that we were running on the side of the site and shit. And there's software to do all that stuff now. I mean, it probably was at the time. I was probably just too clueless to figure it out. But I don't know though, because I was like hiring pretty smart computer programmers at the time. But all that shit was just it was baffling to me at the time, and just figuring it all out was really a big part of the thrill. And that's kind of what I always go back to even now, is that I kind of have like two parallel motivations. Like one of them is just literal content creation. And it's, it used to be me writing a blog about a new video that came out and just sort of talking about whatever. And then now it's doing podcasts. Like that's my one passion. But then the other passion is really just building a business and building businesses in general. And yeah, that's what I feel really motivated by now, is actually I've kind of got it in my head, like, I just want to make more money off of things that don't involve me being on camera, because I can kind of see that there's a shelf life of me being on camera. I don't necessarily want to like base my entire business around me putting in the work.
Yeah.
It would be equivalent to like a poker player. I'm sure that the money you make from your site and everything makes you playing poker feel a lot safer.
Yeah,
because
of course,
if you have a big ass downswing, all right, well, cool, your bills and everything are still paid for. You've got this other business. That's kind of how I think of it. I love doing the content, but I also really don't want that to be the only thing that's making my company tick.
Yeah. No, absolutely. One thing I definitely want to bring it up, because there might be some other poker players who listen to it. I'm never a big fan of separating these two, or mixing up these two. I love to keep it separated. So let's say I have my poker bankroll and I have my money that I make with businesses and investments and whatever. So if my poker bankroll shrinks, I'm not going to take money out of my company or my private money. This is my private money, because I don't know, like I know how brutal poker can be. And I don't know if I would be able to be so aware and conscious to find the stop button to say, okay, I'm not going to take out more money, and I keep playing the same, like the highest stakes, right? So I still follow a very strict bankroll management, where I simply don't want to mix these two together. And I think this can be very dangerous when also the young aspiring poker players, you lose some money online and then maybe you start depositing some money from, I don't know, your private account. I think you should really separate it, at least for me, because I don't know. I've never been in that situation. I am not sure if I can handle it. To say, all right, now I lost so much money. Now I'm gonna stop taking money out of the company, because if I start doing it, I get used to it, and my ego tells me, no, you're good enough. It's just a downswing. Keep taking more money, and it gets in a vicious cycle where I lose it all. So that's why I have very strict rules and boundaries to this not happening to me.
I think that there's something that as poker players, you have to care about doing things the right way. You have to care about maximizing your EV, even if it's a microscopic amount, even if it's like in the sense of like practicing proper bankroll management. You just know that's part of being a good poker player. And yeah, you could definitely go outside of that, but there's a big thrill to me in just doing things the right way. And I find myself, even when I'm like time banking to make like a $14 ladder, it's like I don't care about this $14, but it feels good to play the game the right way, the best, most optimal
absolutely
way.
Yeah. 100%. That's why I'm still grinding the Sunday Storm. Sometimes for me, it's not about the money. It's like also a prestigious title. I just love winning. And also I think it comes with a respect to the game. I mean, the variance can be brutal. It's still gambling to a certain degree. It can mess us up with our minds. There's a reason why people are getting addicted to it, lose their wealth, are getting into debt. And so that's why I have clear boundaries, because I'm not a machine, and I don't think nobody is. So you need to set yourself clear limits, clear boundaries, and so this cannot happen. I never can fully understand when people is like, yeah, I'm strong enough, I'm a mental warrior, and I will handle all the downswings and variance. I can be a bit more aggressive with my bankroll management. Like, you've never been there, perhaps, and so be a bit more careful. I think especially in poker, where poker is so brutal, the variance is so brutal, you need to have very strict rules and boundaries in place. If you play it professionally, of course. If you just intend to play it recreationally, you don't care whether you win or not, you just want to have some fun, go ahead,
Definitely. I mean, they were saying that Ape Styles like won $1 million and then lost $1 million last year, I think. Like that's pretty much all I needed to hear to like remind me of how bad the variance can get. That you could be one of the best players in the world and run that bad. It's yeah, it's pretty
I mean, I've heard of stories where people made 3 million, 4 million, and they lost it all. And they've been probably playing bigger buy-ins than I did and playing more on a regular basis. So if it happened to them, it can easily happen to me. At some point, the amount of money, and you know how it is with when people are getting rich and rich, it sometimes shows their true characters. And I don't know, maybe it triggers some dark shit in me that I've never really, had the chance to unravel or to bring to the surface. And maybe, like a huge score, I suddenly, I don't know what happens, man. So I just want to keep the respect. I'm not afraid of it. I just respect the variance. I respect the money. And yeah, even if I have a deep run in tournament, and last year, I think WSOP main event, I got final 2 tables where there was like 5 million, 6 million for first. I was not even so mad not reaching the final table, man. I don't want to know what all this money makes with me. It's like, okay, I can still enjoy the grind, still enjoying the process. So, all right, everything at its time, at its place. So.
No, 100%. I think, you just never want to lose respect for the money. Like just being the kind of person that I am, where, I've seen so many people in my life who all of a sudden they sign in advance with a label and they get a couple $100,000 and they're in the club all of a sudden spending $5,000 in a night buying bottles and couches and crazy shit with girls and drugs, all this stuff. And it's like I've just seen them come back to earth so many times where all of a sudden they would play a show for $200 after that. Like the money just runs out really fast. And it's like I feel like that's a huge thing for me, is I just never want to be the kind of person that is flashy or materialistic, which it can be kind of tempting living in LA and being around all these rappers and shit. But I just know that that's so not me. And I just have too much respect for the money. I actually really love being cheap, which a lot of people always want to remind me of, like, you're a white guy, so you get to like they see it as like a cultural difference where it's like it's accepted for white guys to be cheap and have regular ass clothes or regular car or whatever, and that's kind of like a privilege of being white, which is interesting to me. But
yeah, man, and I also love when people underestimate you. You don't run around like as if you have a lot of money. If people just treat you as some ordinary person and maybe underestimate you a little bit. I love that shit. Like, I love being the underdog. I love being underestimated. It gives you such a massive advantage in all different areas. I had it so many times. Even I remember back then, my circle friends, when I was still hidden, nobody knew I was playing poker. When everyone was talking about poker, I was holding back. I was not, hey, I'm crushing sit and goals. I was like, let them talk, let them do their thing. They were judging my plays, and they were not even beating their casino games. And it's kind of fun. Like, it's really, I think it just gives you a massive edge, man, if people underestimate you.
Yeah, and I've really like I just grew up, my parents telling me, you don't talk about how much money you make. Like, my parents would just always tell me that was just common sense. Like, you'd never do that. And I always have, like, as I've gone through my life, I've just seen that more and more of, like, that is great advice, because I just see people who start to get a lot of money and people treat them differently. I mean, actually, poker is really kind of a fascinating culture where, almost all the guys who make the most money don't really, like, they're not like coming in wearing crazy jewelry and stuff like that. It's pretty much even like, I don't ever see like online poker grinders who are like, look at my $2 million house, like even that stuff is kind of taboo, I feel like.
No, absolutely. Do you think it's unique in poker? I mean, you're very experienced in the music industry, rap industry. Do you think it's different there? I have experienced it in football. I used to play semi-professional football and I had a lot of friends. Once I stopped playing football, they got into Bundesliga teams, second Bundesliga teams. They started making money, and I saw them, driving around with flashy cars, expensive watches and stuff like that. And but I barely see that in poker. Usually the guys that are really crushing, making a lot of money, they're not boasting off.
Yeah, and they're like, oh, well, I have a 2-bedroom apartment. Like, why would I need anything more than that? Like, I honestly, like, I have a nice house now, and I never would have bought this house if my girl wasn't, like, yo, like we have to spend our money on something at some point. Like we gotta invest, you know? But yeah, I mean, it's looked at so differently in rap because it's kind of like the jewelry and the clothes and everything is just viewed as a business expense of sort of presenting this image that like the idea is basically if you're going to be taken seriously as a rapper, you need to kind of like express how well you're doing for yourself
You can write
through the
off your
jewelry.
watches, really? Your jewelry?
Yeah, I mean, like dudes are like that for sure. They take it super serious, and you know, I get it where they're coming from, but also I just like realize that I'm lucky to be in a position where if I wear, you know, I actually really like a lot of rappers just will never wear the same shirt twice, and I really like getting a shirt and wearing it like 40 times, and
Yeah,
just watching people that I know ask me like, what, like how many times are you gonna wear that fucking shirt? And I'm just like, bro, this is normal. Like, there's no reason to wear a t-shirt once and then never wear it again. This is just a stupid ass thing that rappers have decided that they think is normal.
yeah. No, absolutely. What is
But
it
then you see
that?
it trickle down to the kids and shit too. They
Yeah,
believe,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
you know, they think
That's
that they should behave like millionaires.
dude. When I was little, my brother was wearing his clothes a million times, and I was the small one. So when he was 10, I was 5, and I was 10, I had to wear his shit. So I mean, I didn't grow up in poverty, but also we weren't overly rich. We were just an average family, right? And so,
Right.
you know, here and there we had to look at the money if we wanted to afford I don't know, a travel or something. Like a 4-man family, like a travel can be very expensive, right? So it was not like, oh, you can buy designer clothes and the big older brother can buy designer clothes. So when I was little, my brother was growing out of his clothes. I had to wear his clothes. So, you know, until the point where I started also paying a little more attention towards, you know, when stuff happened with girls, you know, you got interested in girls, 13, 14, then it was like, Mom, can I maybe have now start buying my own jeans? Before
I
that was
mean,
common that you would wear
yeah.
the stuff from your brother.
So many people like lose the plot once it comes time to start impressing the opposite sex. Like that's when people lose their whole sense of who they
Absolutely.
are, men and women, for sure. It happens all the time, and it's pretty fascinating, you know?
It is. I don't know who I talked with about that topic. If we what would you do if you really wouldn't need to impress women from a man perspective? Says literally whatever you do, it doesn't matter. And I find it just a very interesting question. Like I 100% agree with you that I think we actually like 95% of what we do and what we try to accomplish just to impress the other sex, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've been with the same girl for like 5 years and have a baby now, so I feel like I'm kind of like basically in that state of mind of like you know, and there's a lot of things I've stopped doing. Like I used to go out to the club and drink, you know, I wasn't blowing crazy money or whatever, but I used to go to parties and drink and
Yeah.
all this stuff, and just like through being in a relationship I just kind of kept getting more and more honest with myself of like I don't want to be hungover anymore. Like
Yeah.
I don't enjoy this. I'm not getting anything out of this. This is clearly like stopping me from accomplishing the things that I do want to accomplish. And that was an easy decision to make. And I can imagine that if I was still single, it would be a little bit trickier since, you know, that was kind of my primary way of like interacting with girls was just like going out to bars and clubs and stuff. So yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, I think being in a good relationship can kind of reveal your true self to you in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I've been going out a lot as well, and at some point I realized, man, and let's face the truth, why are we going out?
But it's funny because I feel like in Europe, it's so much more accepted that that's just a normal part of life. And in America, we think of like going to bars and clubs as like something that deviant young people do.
Really?
I think so. I mean, like just being in England, like and going to a pub and
Okay, listen,
seeing a bunch of grandmas sitting
England
around.
is completely different when it comes to that. When I lived in England and Brighton for a year, I was shocked, man. I was shocked how. I'm not saying I was not used to it. I was like, what is going on? That's insane. How wasted people get, and
Yeah,
it was crazy.
Like I feel like mostly like by the time people are like in their 40s, if you were to see them at a bar or a club, you would think that there was probably something wrong with them in America, and that just so is not the case. Where like drinking is just viewed as a normal thing that everybody does, and America, it's kind of viewed as like, this is like a young person's pastime, I think.
Yeah.
Mm.
No, absolutely. You were mentioning we were talking a little bit about the way people spend their money. What is something that you love to spend your money on? What we can consider more maybe as indulgement, or that you really enjoy spending your money on?
I honestly don't know if I have anything. Like, I don't
No,
really. Yeah, no, it's pretty much. And sometimes I think, now
it
that
can be
everybody's
smaller
all about like,
things. Maybe I don't
huh?
know. Maybe it can be smaller things. Maybe you enjoy your a golden burger or golden steak. I don't know what fancy stuff
I
it
don't
could
know.
be.
I think about that a lot now because it's so normal for people to put their money into things like, oh, I have a collection of these things, but then
Yeah.
it's not really thought of as a collection. This is an investment because these things all hold value. I don't even really have that. And I think about that sometimes like, wow, it would be kind of cool to like collect something. But I don't know. I just don't really. I pretty much like work, hang out with my family, play poker. I don't know. I don't really have anything that I like spend money on,
I
to be
don't know. Maybe
honest.
there are people that say if they travel, it has to be business class, or
No,
I don't
I don't do
know.
it. I flew first class one time because my girl upgraded the flight without telling me.
Was it a
I feel like I
positive or
have like
negative surprise at this point in time? How did you feel about that?
no, it was fine because it was only like $1,000 and we were flying to Tokyo. So it's like a
Okay.
12-hour flight or some
I mean,
shit. So I was actually
that's
like, wow, I'm really thankful you made that decision. That was incredible. But yeah, I have kind of like a moral opposition to flying first class and just paying all that money for a
first class
better
is.
air.
You sometimes get good deals with business class, and I feel like the gap
Mm.
between economy and business is worth it if you get a good deal. But then from business to first class, just for I don't know half a square meter more space, it's just sometimes wow, that's really like from I don't know you economy to
Yeah.
400, then business you might get a deal for a grand or 1.5 grand, then first class like 5 grand. Like what? That's insane.
Yeah, it just feels kind of dirty to me. Like the
Yeah.
idea of giving them that much money for such a small convenience. I'm just like, I don't love valeting. Like it really stands out to me that that's like a really stupid thing to spend $10 on. But it's so convenient in that moment that like you just got to roll with it. But with the first class, it's kind of like I would almost rather sit in the shitty chair and just like read a book on my phone or some shit for a few hours and not enjoy the time and like know in my head that I'm saving $1,000 or whatever than to like have the comfortable flight where I spend $1,000. I don't know.
I envy those people that can read in an airplane or in a car. I don't know.
Oh, you
If I
can't?
10 minutes and then I get dizzy.
Oh yeah, I
So
get that a little bit. I hate that.
10 minutes, then I have to take a nap or just close my eyes. And another time, even watching movies is kind of can be. I don't know.
Yeah, I hear it.
Something.
I hear it.
Yeah. So back a little bit to poker. If are you also do you have plans? Plans? I saw someone ask you on Twitter to play live anytime soon when it gets back to normal, or you just strictly online poker?
Yeah, for me, I would always rather play online than live. Live is just, if you got used to playing poker at the pace of playing, 6 or more tables
Yeah.
online, it can just be really, really hard to see the EV and like, you just like look down at like 10 deuce off under the gun and you're like, I'm folding this and then I'm not going to have anything to do for like 3, 4 minutes. That's just a shitty feeling, dude. I don't know how people deal with it.
Yeah. I can imagine you being quite good at life. You seem very talkative, very sociable. You might be able to get some really good reads out of your opponents.
Yeah, no, I would like to study all that stuff because I feel like I'm kind of all that of like being able to read people and stuff is something I've never really put time into. But I played it like live at the bike a couple of times before I really started studying, and I was actually about to do it again right before COVID hit, but they're starting to do that shit again, and I'm actually really looking forward to that because yeah, I've been playing a lot more like small stakes cash and just playing like Zoom on ACR and just kind of enjoying like learning more about cash and just thinking more about it and stuff. And I've really been like marking hands, and I just want to like kind of keep working on that side of the skill set too, because a lot of times I just don't have the 10-hour runway that you need to have an MTT day. You kind of need to have your whole day cleared, and it's like really fun for me to just like sit there and play cash for like an hour and then go on my way, because a lot of times my days just don't allow me to just have like that clear runway, you know?
Yeah. So you were just saying that the days are not allowing it. So I mean, as I brought it up initially already, you're very busy, and this is something when I interview people. Since I'm also on a very busy schedule, I'm always open to hear how other people are managing their schedules. How do you, balance your time between podcasting, crushing tournaments, raising a child, any other obligations you have? Probably you also have a big stuff. You have meetings, little problems coming up. Is it just you go with the day, or do you have any specific routines?
Yeah, my routine is pretty much the same every day. Like I wake up at about 7. I get in the gym.
AM? Oh, early.
Yeah, 7, 8. And then I have a personal trainer who I meet up with every morning. Like honestly, like the stuff that I spend money on is like I have a personal trainer. I have a fucking meal prep company that like delivers me super healthy meals every day. Like those are the kind of things that I feel comfortable spending a bunch of money on.
But also it's kind of reinvesting, right? So you're investing in yourself.
Yeah, because it's like I have to be on camera. It's like if I am going to pay this guy to make sure that I don't become a fucking fat ass at some point in my life, then that's a really good investment for me.
Yeah.
You know, that is a weird moment when you realize, like, as a entertainer or a person who's on camera, that you just looking good, like you not looking like shit, at least, is like just a huge part of like how people view you. You see it all the time with celebrities where they'll like go on a diet and they'll like all of a sudden show up 6 months later with a six pack, and it's in the news like this is the most important thing in the world, like this is like a real PR moment for a lot of people.
Yeah. And no, same when it goes the opposite way, when they are not following a diet for 6 months. That probably creates a bigger attention than actually the diet itself.
No, that's a crazy thing.
Yeah, it is, man.
If somebody puts on a bunch of weight, the news will report on them, and also we all kind of like intrinsically believe this, that we all assume there must be something really wrong in their life.
Yeah.
Even though we've all done it, we've all packed on a bunch of weight over a period of time, but like it's crazy how our brain is trained to just think like, oh, he gained 100 pounds, like he must be going through some horrible shit.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Cutting out news has been a big game changer for me.
What was that?
Cutting out news has been a big game changer for me. Yeah.
You mean just like on TV, or do you mean like
everything?
Even looking at Twitter and whatnot?
I mean, TV, yeah, for sure. Newspaper. I was signed up to some online agencies, online reporting sites. Right now, the only news I get is from other people, or if I sign into my email, and on the site you see some news, but that's pretty much it. Like it's just
that's kind of like a constant back and forth to me too, because I follow these like political accounts on Twitter, and it's like the most furthest ends of the spectrum of like conservatives and mega leftists, and they're just like going to war with each other. And at a certain point, when I'm looking at this shit on Twitter, I'm like, what am I doing? Like, why am I introducing this shit into my brain? Like, what am I gaining from knowing about this animosity that all these groups have towards each other? Especially when like my business doesn't really touch on that, and I don't really need to like, none of this stuff fucking benefits me, but am I just completely fucking up by devoting some percentage of my consciousness to other people's grievances with each other?
Yeah. I think it's also just ingrained in us from our parents and society. We need to stay updated. I remember my parents, I'm not blaming them. I mean, it's just, sometimes we don't know better. Yeah, but we need to know what's going on. If you're on an event chatting with people and you talk about events, you need to know what's happening. Otherwise, you can't talk with them. It's like when I started growing up, 15, 16, 17, I also started to get a more interest in what's going on in the world. I'm like, yeah, it makes sense, and you just take it in, watch the news. You say, You're like basically trained to be a zombie, just follow it, and you're not really questioning it, right?
I mean, I think there's a lot of value to like just knowing what's going on in the world. Like if you didn't know about the storming of the Capitol, if you weren't like relatively familiar with all the different things that went on during like Donald Trump's presidency. Obviously, I'm talking mostly as an American, but I think that if you didn't know about any of that stuff, then you would probably be a pretty shitty podcaster or like a uninteresting person to have a conversation with. But then on the other hand, it's so easy to just pay attention to all the minutia of these little beefs and wars that are going on Twitter all the time. And I'll even find myself like, some guy that I've never heard of in my life is fired as the editor of a cooking magazine because he said something like vaguely racist 10 years ago. And for some reason, I'm reading an article about this. And at certain points, I sort of check myself and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, why are you reading this? This doesn't matter to your life in any way. But you kind of get addicted to seeing the cancellation and the process of this shit that people go through,
Yeah. I have to say though, I agree with you on that if you don't know anything at all, it's kind of rough. But from my experience, if there's something really interesting or important, people are going to be reporting it to you. Friends, family, like usually, hey, have you heard about Trump or whatever? And some of the topics I'm still interested, of course, with Trump or whatever was going on, I try to, catch some information. But the way I see it is I make an active decision. It's like, hey, this is interesting. This might have an impact on the world. I want to know what's going on instead of just sitting in front of the TV, watching it because people are telling me it's important to know. And I actually don't really know why I'm watching it in the first place. It's just about making that conscious decision and staying in control of what you consume and what you not.
Right. And I think that a thing that sort of goes off in my head frequently, I subscribe to the New York Times. I trust them with a large percentage of the stuff that they put out there, and it's like, if I just kind of like check the New York Times Twitter account once a day, I could probably like see all of the major stories that I should know about. And I wouldn't have been like sort of tapped into this constant slow drip feed of stories throughout the day, which is basically what being on Twitter is like. Like if there's a bombing or a shooting or something, Twitter is going to tell you about it right as it's happening. It's going to give you every little tick of details as they figure out what's going on or whatever. And then you get to read all these opinion pieces of people blaming it on this and saying it's a product of this. And I mean, the alternative to that, if you still want to be an informed person that knows about this sort of thing, is you could, like the newspaper type experience. You pick up every morning, you have your coffee and you look at a newspaper and you get to see all the things that happened the day before. And then you don't know anything new about what's going on in the world until the next day. I mean, that sounds kind of sexy now in comparison to like the way a lot of people live on Twitter, just knowing about everything as it happens,
Yeah. I just remember that one week where I went to Iceland, no news, no social media, nothing. I've never been in such a more calm and happy state after that 1 week of just completely detoxing my brain and my mind from that BS. I'm on a regular basis, I try to, pay attention to it. But even that next step, just, man, like I can't describe it. I really can't describe it. Something I can only recommend everyone trying it out. Being on your own solitary for a couple of days, something you would probably also discover very often in books when some very successful men are preaching about their way to success and what they have been trying out. And I came across this kind of advice quite frequently, and I was like, okay, let's give it a try. Let's go in solitary for a week. And I was like, afterwards, I was like, I don't give a fuck. It's just me, and I care about the people I love, and oh, there's this going on. And right now, you worry about this kind of shit. What's going on here? What's going on there? You have worries, anxiety, still stuff triggers you. It was quite impactful.
Definitely. And I think that's, I never used to go on vacations. I would travel a lot for various things I was into or whatever. But my girl, she'll just kind of force it on me like, hey, we're going to this island for a week. Like at this point, this year, we're going to do this. And I mean, it's really unbelievable how much your brain is capable of when you're not flooding it with information at all times, and that's what I've really kind of grown to appreciate about being on vacation or just, hanging out on the beach and not really being on your phone that much or whatever for a week. I mean, your brain will reveal a lot of shit to you when you sort of turn off the the feed of information that you're always getting, and that's super important. And like I remember I had a month in Barcelona in 2012 where me and a couple of my friends we went out there with our bikes, and we just got an apartment, and every day we would just go out and ride bikes, and my phone didn't really work because the service shit, like I just didn't really have service unless I was like at a McDonald's or at our apartment. And I mean, that was one of the best months of my life. And I really feel like a lot of the stuff that I'm doing now and like having the confidence to start a podcast kind of came from having that month to really like look at my life objectively. And I had been, head down working my ass off on the bike riding side of things and the website and everything. And I think that was when I really started to realize, like, you might be meant for bigger things. Like, I think you can do more. Like, you can't just keep doing the same shit that you were doing when you were 13 for the rest of your life. Like, it's good that you've been doing it for this long and that you love it so much, but there's a lot more that you could pursue. And I think that, like, just having that time away from my phone and whatnot really helped show me that.
Yeah. Oh, it's great that you made similar experience. I have to say, even if I talk to people not very often, it's like, yeah, maybe I should give it a try. I think it can be really powerful. But nobody earns on it, right? Being in solitary, so it's probably not something that you will find in the mainstream. People advising you to do, usually just consuming stuff or buying stuff that makes you figure out shit.
Yeah, I've always really wanted to do some kind of like solitary type thing. It feels kind of overwhelming, especially now that I have like a bunch of employees and a family. I don't know necessarily that I would be able to pull it off, but I love that idea because I listen to a lot of Sam Harris, and he talks a lot about his experience being doing the meditation retreats and whatnot.
Yeah. What I want to do is I already reached out to a guy on Instagram. I was researching it now for the last couple of years to find someone in the wild and is doing some sort of survival week only with basic stuff. Not that fancy stuff where you bring all the technology and you're just going to be camping in a luxurious trailer in the wilderness. No, maybe just a tent and some basic equipment and tools and just being out there and having a guy with you that teaches you some basic stuff. And I don't even know why. I think some last 2 or 3 years when I wasn't in Iceland or another vacation, usually when I also go on a vacation with my girlfriend, we say, okay, we cut out social media. And I was like, I want to do this shit. And this is also something that I tell people. It's like, if you're on a solitary or if you cut out the distraction and this information overload, sometimes you just get this impulse like, I want to do this. And I couldn't really explain why. I got way more attracted towards nature. And I've always been living in a city. I've always been using a lot of technology with poker. Before that, having phones and all that kind of stuff. I'm not that kind of farm boy, or that had a connection with nature. But I was like, right. I want to do that shit. I want to be more in nature. I want to do survival trainings. I want to learn the basics on how to survive in nature. And I can't even say why. Like, sometimes stuff comes up that tells you, hey, you should be doing this, you should be doing that. It's magic. I don't know why, man.
You know what I was thinking about the other day is how only really now for like maybe the past year or two have I really started, or not even, I don't even want to give myself that, a year or two. Let's say like the past month or two. I've really started to realize I feel pretty comfortable financially, and I feel pretty comfortable with how my company is unfolding and the things that we're working on and everything. And that feels really, really good. But that also is forcing me to like really do a lot of sort of soul searching of like, okay, like if you feel comfortable financially, then you really need to look at what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. Like, what are you actually spending your time on? And that's almost like a kind of scary thing to confront, because I think most people just get, the vast majority of people, they basically just work their whole life, and they never really like get that kind of space to even consider like, what would I do if I could just do whatever I wanted?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
That it's weird, because you probably could get to that mentality for a lot of people without having to actually like make a lot of money. For me, I feel like I've only even been able to think about this because I feel comfortable financially. But if I hadn't got to that point, I probably would have spent the whole rest of my life thinking that life was all about working your ass off, which it just so isn't.
Yeah. Have you read the book from Bill Perkins, Diver Zero?
No, I've actually I've looked into him a little bit, though. I would like to read that.
It's a good book, especially for me. It was very impactful. Can highly recommend, especially when you're in the phase right now. You want to maybe find some more not purpose, but maybe not anything about working and making money. Maybe also finding something where you can also enjoy the accomplishments and celebrate what you have accomplished in a certain way, whatever fulfills you. Not wait until you're, I don't know, 80 and then you die with a lot of money and you've never really experienced life.
Yeah, no, totally.
We also did a podcast, so we share. Well, he's sharing a lot of
Okay, you know
nuggets.
what? Actually, yeah, I missed that one. I've seen a huge percentage of your shit, but I did not watch that one. But I definitely got to check that out
Yeah, it's a great book. Should definitely read it.
for sure.
So you were also talking about the podcast, and it's something that's also very interesting to me. You had so many different episodes with great artists. What was the biggest learning or the biggest aha moment from one of your shows or one of your guests that joined your show and you were sharing something, you were like, fuck, that's deep or that's big?
Wow. Damn. I mean, there's just been so many, honestly. Like, there's been a lot of like really eye-opening moments in terms of just really seeing how people live and stuff. But to be honest, I think a lot of it too has just been that process of like interviewing somebody when they're really early in their career and then seeing them become, important in the eyes of people, and then seeing how much value there is in sort of just being that blueprint for people to understand an artist early in their career.
Yeah.
I think that like providing that value by interviewing them it's just such an important thing to me. And it's also like, especially when I started to do it, I just felt like there's not a lot of people who are really taking these young artists serious. They're not really like having a lot of the nature of a lot of the conversations I was seeing online at that time was they were sort of clowning them or like not really understanding where they were coming from. And I felt like, damn, I'm an older guy. I'm in my 30s even when I started doing interviews, but I don't look down on a young rapper, and I don't really feel like I'm that different than them because I very distinctly remember being like 18 and full of dreams basically and just really wanting to make something out of myself. And so I don't look at a rapper and think like, oh, this is a crazy gun-toting lunatic, even though like I feel like for a lot of people they sort of just like default to that. And I feel like that anytime I do an interview with somebody who is somebody that people tend to not take serious and I'm able to like pull something out of them that makes people reconsider what they think of that person, that's like that's just a huge gift to me right there.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. In rap, because like in rap, there's just so many people that they just don't like give these guys the respect they deserve. Or I think one thing I've realized over the years too is that, you could be like a well-read, college educated person and sound smart, but a lot of these rappers, they might not speak a language that necessarily like makes people automatically assume that they're very wise.
Mm-hmm.
But the shit that they're actually telling you, if you are familiar enough with how they express themselves to really like understand what they're saying, is, I feel like that's been a kind of crazy realization, is that you can get stuff that's very insightful out of people that might not necessarily have the strongest grasp on like, traditional English.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, that's like a big thing, is like I find myself sort of like reading into the stuff that people are saying to me on the podcast a lot and learning a lot from them, even if they might not really seem like they're necessarily super smart.
Yeah. I've always admired rappers in a way where they stand for something. You might recognize a pattern here that this is something I consider to become very successful, especially I think as Europeans, as Germans, we're usually trained to be, not trained, but raised in a way where, stay under the radar, don't make noise, you follow orders, be in time, don't think outside the box, don't use your elbows, which is not a great advice for business. And for me, rappers were always an embodiment of, go for whatever you want to, what you want to accomplish. A lot of these rappers went probably through a lot of shit and they have the balls to put whatever they want down on paper, sing about it. And I'm pretty sure early in the career, they went through a lot of, judgmental opinions and not necessarily nice. And they kept pushing, they kept reaching out to labels. And I would say rappers have probably faced more no's and rejections than almost all of the other professions. Like, I can imagine it must be incredibly tough to get to a point where you can make a living out of it. Like your first samples, your first tracks, you're being laughed at, and having the fortitude and having the confidence to continue and believe in your shit, man. It requires my deepest respect. Even though some of the tracks I don't enjoy or I don't agree with the lyrics or whatever, but just that, that trait that rappers embody, it deserves my deepest respect.
I mean, rap is a funny thing when you think about it, where there's like nobody gives you any respect as a rapper unless you are a famous, successful rapper. And that's kind of different than a lot of things like in the bike riding and skateboarding world that I really kind of grew up in. It's like it's very much okay to just be some kid who's skateboarding. Like it's totally fine. Like you might get a little bit of judgment from people. Obviously, if you're really, really good, you get a lot of positive respect and everything, but everybody seems to understand that it's totally fine for you to suck. And even in poker, it's like like you probably have some friends who are pretty bad at poker and they play poker and they enjoy poker, and that's just fine. It's totally okay. And rap is just not like that, where if you are an unsuccessful rapper, it's just viewed as like you're a fucking bum. And that is kind of like weird and illogical and produces some weird outcomes, like where you see guys who love making music, who love rapping, but they hit 30 and they don't want to be an unsuccessful rapper, so they stop doing that. It's kind of viewed as like only acceptable if it's a way out of your economic circumstances by a large percentage of people.
Yeah. Yeah, whenever I listen to rap music, I'm like, and I'm not feeling so good, I'm like maybe quitting on something or whatever, it just gives me the mindset, okay, keep going. They've probably went through way more shit than you do, so get your shit together, Ben, and try one more time.
Yeah, that's weird that like everybody seems to get that at this point in time, that like a rap song about like selling drugs is not really about selling drugs. It's about going to work and having a good day and doing your business and being about your business. Like everyone sort of, without saying it, understands that song is a metaphor for taking care of your business, right? Like I feel like with it being so popular, people seem to just sort of like absorb that without ever saying that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we were talking about podcasts. How is it for you? Do you enjoy being more on a podcast, or do you enjoy more being the host of a podcast?
I like both. It's funny how much easier it is to talk about yourself than to like figure out how to make somebody else interesting.
Yeah.
Because that's what I have to do after this. I have to fucking get ready for 3 podcasts that I have to do tomorrow, and it's basically like I was at the barber the other day, and the barber was just saying, he's like, do you think it's better when you do a podcast to know a lot about the person or to just sort of learn about them on the podcast? And I was thinking about it because on one hand, I think people just really want expertise out of their podcasts. Like it just, they don't want to listen to somebody who doesn't know shit talking about something that they don't understand.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, like, it is fun to really learn about somebody for the first time on a podcast. And I'm always kind of balancing that, because on one hand, I like the feeling of just sitting down and like learning all this shit for the first time. A lot of times I will interview somebody and they have interviews out, but I know that if I watch that interview, I'm going to know their whole story and the podcast isn't going to be that fun. But then on the other hand, I'm interviewing a dude tomorrow who's like pretty much one of the most respected, like he basically was like one of the most respected gang leaders, who then has kind of become like a community organizer and like a filmmaker and stuff. So it's a pretty amazing story.
Yeah.
But with his story, I really feel like it would be a huge disservice if I just learned his story from him on the interview, because I feel like he's done so much and he's a pretty important guy that it's like, how could I sit there in the interview and not have familiarized myself with a lot of the stuff that he's done throughout his life? So, but then honestly, the other 2 artists that I'm interviewing tomorrow are very much like new artists that have like some popular songs, but I don't feel anywhere near the same level of like, I need to know everything about that guy.
Yeah.
Because if you're a new artist, it's kind of like, let's just have a fun conversation and get to know each other. If it's somebody who's done so much, there's very much that pressure on you. Like, I need to know everything I can about this guy.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. you seem to be someone who's genuinely intrigued in people and how they experience stuff and how they get there where they are right now. So I guess it also makes it easier for you to just say, whatever comes up in the podcast, hey, this interests me, and this might be valuable for my community. Just let's narrow it a little more down and go dive deeper on that.
Yeah, I mean, being a good podcaster is all about listening and all about being able to really be, like it's very hard for people in our modern society to just stop thinking about themselves and stop thinking about other shit and just think about the person talking in front of them. And even myself, like it's very much like a difficult state of mind to get myself into at times where I just don't want anything else going on in my brain. I want to be fully locked in on you, thinking about you and thinking, what is the most interesting thing that I could get this person to talk about right now? Because like, me and you could talk about food for the next 20 minutes.
Yeah.
But who the fuck cares? There's so many people that are better suited to talk about food than us.
Yeah.
And that's like, I'm always kind of running that algorithm in my brain of like, am I talking about the most interesting thing that we could be talking about right now? Or like what, like I have a co-host AD who I've been sort of like building up, like having him co-host on my podcast, and he's got his own show on my channel now and everything. And one of the first things that stood out to me when I was watching him do one of his first podcasts by himself was like, he was talking to this co-host and she said something about how it was her birthday that weekend and her friends had like one of her friends or both of her friends that she was supposed to meet up with had bailed on her birthday. And he sort of just glossed over it and just like kept talking about something else. And I was like, bro, you cannot do that. If somebody shares something traumatic and really interesting and like profound, like I was like, I just think you weren't listening in that moment, because if you were listening and if you cared about the person sitting across from you, then you would have dug in, because that's some fucking that's interesting, like and potentially very sad as well. But that just really stood out to me as like, that's what it's about to be a good listener. Like you have to be in tune and you have to care about the person enough to like to want to find out like what are they really trying to tell you right now? Like maybe they aren't so happy, maybe they have things that they are aspiring to do that they haven't done yet, and maybe they're kind of hinting at that. And I love that process of just being able to sort of try and decode what makes somebody interesting and what they're going through.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If there would be one guest that you would like to get on the show, who would it be?
Well, I had Drake DM me one time and say he wanted to do the podcast, and he just never hit me up about it again. And I never wanted to like follow up on it by saying like, hey, we should do that. So that has always kind of stood out to me in my head as like the podcast that would be the most epic one to do, that also like kind of seems reasonable, because he said it at one point, and I mean he's sent me memes and other random shit since then. But yeah, that one's always stood out to me as like, wow, that would be an amazing podcast to do. But then the problem is that I know this guy Elliot Wilson, who does a podcast called Rap Radar. They interview artists and stuff, and he had him on. He did a Drake interview, and I think it was honestly the best interview I've ever seen in my life. Like it was the most well-researched, every single interesting thing. Like I honestly don't know what my interview with Drake would be like after having watched that interview, because that interview was so good that it would make it twice as hard for me to figure out exactly the things I wanted to talk about,
Yeah, but why Drake?
I just think he's probably the most important artist of my lifetime, and has changed rap music the most, and music as a whole. And I'm just very much in awe of the longevity, really. Like just the fact that he's been doing this for this long. Like rappers don't have a fucking 13-year shelf life and get to still be at the top of their game. So I don't know, it's just everything about how he's managed to get to the point he's at is just so baffling to me.
Yeah. Is there anybody else in the world that you could consider getting on the show, but seems a little far away outside of the rap music? Is there anyone that maybe a role model, maybe someone that inspires you? Maybe let's talk a little bit about that person that you look up to. that you would like, not necessarily always got in the show, but also look up to? And of course, would also be great to get him on the show or her.
One of the craziest ones was that a big part of why I started doing podcasts was Joe Rogan, which I actually haven't watched one of his podcasts since he moved to Spotify, which I feel kind of bad about. I just still don't have Spotify, so I don't really know. I haven't been keeping tabs on him at all. But early on, when I had maybe only been doing podcasts for a year or two, I just wake up and Joe Rogan's following me on Twitter, and I'm just like, what the fuck? And I look at my DMs, and he messaged me, and the message from Joe Rogan said, I was in the airport yesterday, and this guy came up to me, and he told me that he was on acid, and he told me that I should really look into you and do an interview with you or whatever. And I'm just like, yeah, man, we should do it. I don't think I ever asked him again. I never followed up on it. There's something about like if they're that famous and busy and important, you just kind of like want to leave the ball in their court, I guess. Like, I don't know, maybe I should be more aggressive. But I thought it was pretty amazing that some guy on acid in the airport was who made him interested in me at all. Yeah.
That's pretty sick. How did you feel, man, when you saw the inbox of Joe Rogan?
I mean, whatever. I thought it was pretty dope, but also it's like, I'm kind of like, in a lot of ways, I feel like I'm just kind of past treating people different because they're famous. It just doesn't really like click the same way it used to. And I think part of it is the fact that if I met Joe Rogan, I don't think he would want me to treat him like Joe Rogan. I think he'd probably kind of want me to treat him like a regular guy.
Yeah.
And me, myself, I would probably want to, it's like, I don't think I've ever had somebody come at me on some fan shit. Well, I mean, sometimes, but like usually when they come at you and it's like straight, like groveling, like acting like you're so great, it's hard to really like view them in the same way. Like I would rather be around somebody who approaches me as my equal and just treats me like a regular person. That for me is a lot more enjoyable to be around somebody that's just going to be on some regular shit.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. You did so much shit. And now since journalism, I think you're also, that's what I found, that you're a journalist, right? Or you're being considered as a journalist. Do you consider yourself as a journalist?
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't necessarily say that. I feel like there's a lot of like traditional rules that a journalist follows and like a way that they go about doing content. And I mean, I run into that from time to time because like I had somebody on my podcast at one point and got like 1 million views. And then I had a bunch of people like who knew him from back in the day basically saying like, that guy's just lying. Like everything he's saying about his life is a lie. And I was like, oh, fuck. Like, I didn't do any kind of fact checking. Like, I have no idea. And he didn't really like say anything that was that like detrimental to other people's lives. But I've definitely been in that position where somebody's been on the podcast and just straight up like smeared somebody or said something terrible about somebody. And then I ended up having to either delete it or, I just ended up having to fucking have a conversation with the person on the other end of it or whatever. Yeah. Like, I feel like a journalist kind of like holds themselves to a higher standard. And when I think about my podcast, I really like the idea of it just being like me just locking in with people and just talking. And I don't feel any responsibility for like the truth coming out of their mouth. This is whatever they say is how they're depicting it. I feel like a journalist has to have a higher standard.
Yeah. I can see that. So with your podcast and everything you said you love building businesses. So I guess you have a huge amount of experience. Is there something where you have failed or you had a plan, you failed at it and you learned something from it, something that has changed your approach towards business? Biggest learning from your failures in business, so to speak?
So many, man. Like so many things I tried to start up and that just didn't really work, and I had to just sort of scrap it or elaborate on the idea. Like I remember when I had that BMX website going, like I had somehow I was deluded enough to think that I could also start like a parallel mountain bike site and just sort of pay a couple of mountain bike guys to run it and that it would just be fine. And then like, I started to get into it and I realized like, this is the stupidest fucking idea you ever had. You don't know anything about this world. You don't have like the resources or the things that you would expect to sort of like help make this happen. And I'm honestly embarrassed to even mention it, but I'm glad that you just brought that out of me, because that was like fucking 13 years ago or some shit. But there's just been a bunch of crap like that, or even like different content styles that we've tried on YouTube and stuff. I feel like that's what I'm really like working towards, though, is having enough people working for me who are talented enough that we can just keep coming up with more content and more new ideas. And that's what's really attracted to me, is just the idea of me not being necessarily the battery for the whole thing. That like when I realize, like, one of the best feelings for me as a business owner is to realize that my team has been working on something and that they didn't even bother to tell me. And then they just like tell me like, oh, this is this idea we had, and we think it's good. And they present it to me after the fact. Like, that's when you really feel like, holy fuck, I'm getting my money's worth out of these people, because they didn't even bother me with the process of building this idea out. They just kind of took it upon themselves. Like, that's an amazing feeling right there,
I was not sure if you were. You look like as you were thinking if you want to. It
was like a little standoff. I hate Zoom like that, dude, because it's that little gap of like, I feel like saying something again, but then I also don't want to step over what you might have been saying. Yeah.
No, it's all yours. I was waiting for you if there's something more coming out of your mouth.
No, that's yeah. Like, I don't know, like the feeling of building businesses and stuff. And what a big thing I've been working on, to be honest, is just we're buying a new No Jumper office building, and then we're just gonna like
in LA, I guess.
Yeah, and we're gonna set up a couple different podcast spaces so we can have like a couple different shows that all have their own aesthetic appeal, and then also like building out recording studios, because I'm really like we're starting to get to the point team wise where I'm like really trying to sign artists and help artists like build them up and get better contracts from labels and stuff like that. And that's just like a big thing that appeals to me, because, I think I have the ability to listen to people's music and have like a very, very good idea if they have potential or if they could be successful or not. And yeah, that just really appeals to me now more in a way that it didn't appeal to me at all when I didn't have the team around me. But as my team has gotten better and better, it really makes me feel like that's a big part of what I want to do going forward, is just to be able to take young artists and really be able to build them up and see their career through,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I have a follow-up question on that. What would be one thing that you wish to know, or you wish you would have known before you began your career? Could be poker, YouTube, your podcast.
I guess I wish I had just like developed a lot more of an understanding of business and just how to run a business in general, and how to hire a decent accountant early on. And like, there's just so many little that's a big one.
Yeah.
Or even like, the fact that when I look back at like my early website and like merch designs and stuff, I'm like, dude, like, how did it take you so long to figure out that you needed to hire a really good graphic designer? Like, that just, I mean, and now I have a guy on my team who basically just like manages graphic designers for me, who basically like gets, if we have an idea, we're going to make this. It's just like, he sort of gets versions of that from a bunch of different artists, and that's how we figure that shit out. And there's just so many little things that, the fact that I started a business just because I had a passion is really good, but and probably responsible for the fact of what I was lacking in, which was basically, business, organization, all the things that they were like trying to teach me in school that I just kind of didn't properly consume. But that's just been a huge thing of just like sort of learning how to run a business over the years.
How do you find your passion?
I mean, I think you need to just like go back to when you're a kid and look at, this is like the best thought exercise that I've ever really encountered about it, is like, try to think about yourself when you were a kid and you were on the playground, or you had the box of toys in front of you, and just what was the shit that you gravitated towards before you started to become socialized. And that's what happens, is as soon as you start to hang out around people, as soon as you start going to school, they start telling you that this and this are the things that you should be concerned about, and you start to be like everybody else, because it's a lot easier to fit in and wear the same type of pants as the other kids in your class than to just be who you are.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of that stuff is good. Like, it's good to be socialized and to like figure out how to deal with other people and stuff. But I think that if you really want to understand what your passion is, you like, and I even asked my mom, I said to my mom a couple of years ago, I said, what were your impressions of me as a little kid before you started to see me go to school and become socialized? And she said, well, you always were the kind of person who wanted to talk about ideas, and you wanted to discuss things that just seemed way too ambitious for a kid to be thinking about. And she's like, I always loved that about you. But then the other thing about you too was that you really seemed like you didn't give a shit if your teachers liked you. And you almost seemed like you kind of wanted your teachers not to like you. And like you were doing things to like intentionally kind of provoke a response. And she's like, that always stood out to me a lot, that like all these other kids in school were like desperate to win the teacher's approval, and you actively did not give a fuck. And I'm like, wow, like you just told me so much about myself right there. And I think it's really, really important to sort of like unravel those threads and like just try to tap in with who the real you is. And I think when you talk about the isolation experience and stuff, I think a lot of that for a lot of people would be really handy because what do you like with me now, I find myself, I still think of business ideas that I think are pretty good all the time. And I have to kind of stop myself of like, do you want to spend the rest of your life trying to make a couple different businesses pop off? Like, is that the meaning of life to you? Or do you want to like really, really listen to yourself and really try to figure out what you should be doing with the rest of the time you have on earth?
I really love the part about asking this your mom. I think this can be a game changer for many, man. Thank you so much for sharing.
Appreciate it.
I love practicality because you see it on social media where, passion, you just need to find your passion. Nobody really talks about how it just, listen to yourself or whatever. They don't even talk about the solitary part, right? And I also find the advice with passion very dangerous, especially when building a business. I also made a YouTube video about that where, passion is great, but you still need to serve a purpose. You still need to find something that people, they don't care about your passion. They care about what's in for them, right? So you need to find a balance.
I've been watching a lot of Shark Tank lately. And
yeah,
I love it. I hadn't seen it in a few years. And then recently I watched a bunch of episodes, and you see that over and over and over. Well, it's actually like really two things that are bad, which is number one, people come in and it's obvious they're passionate about something, but it's just a horrible idea. And it's like they're blinded by the fact that they're passionate about that thing. And they're just disconnected from the reality of like this being a stupid business idea. But then you also have people coming in all the time who they just want to start a business so bad that they've come up with this ridiculous idea that it's not going to resonate with anyone. And that's pretty fascinating to me. I think a lot of people think that like the meaning of life is starting a successful business, and I was definitely one of those people for a long time. And I really, really I'm kind of glad that I've gotten to this point in my life to be able to see that like how not true that is. And it's certainly like running your own business is probably more enjoyable for a lot of people than just having a shitty job for the rest of your life. But I think there's a lot more to it in terms of like, now I find myself just gravitating a lot more towards, I want to spend a lot more time with my family. I want to spend a lot more time with my kid, my parents. I took a lot of that stuff for granted growing up.
Yeah, I think absolutely. And I'm gonna ask my mom that as well. I'm not surprised what your mom brought up. I mean, here we are today, discussing very hot topics, I guess, asking maybe some provoking questions, not conforming to what society is telling you to do. You seem to be,
I just wonder if your mom
doing what you're
is
meant to
going to
be.
say something that would like directly explain you getting outlandishly good at poker. Like what would be the telltale signs of that early on?
I remember, but there's not so much that, at that age, you barely have any memories, right? But I remember I always wanted to compete in everything. If I would drive home on a bicycle, and I just started learning driving a bicycle, like 5-6 years, and my friend and I would drive home. I would say, let's make it a race. Let's make it a race. Whoever is there first. If we would walk someone, let's make it a run. Let's make it a run. I always wanted to compete already very early on. So this competitiveness, I think, might have been there already from a very early age on, even before I got into football. I started playing football professionally. Like professionally back then, the club itself was very professional. So the youth department was rather professional compared to all the other clubs around it in that area. So I started with 7 or 8 years old playing football, and I think even before that, I always had this. Whatever we were playing in on the playground, is like always making a little competition. Who has the tallest, sand castle or whatever it is. It's this is like brackets what I remember.
Definitely. But you know what is interesting? I saw you tweet about The Last Dance, the Michael Jordan series, right?
Oh, I love it.
But okay, when he was doing the thing where he's backstage and he's rolling the quarters towards the wall with this other guy and they're betting like $1 or $5 or something pretty insignificant. I was watching that and just thinking like, I don't relate to that at all. Like it's, and me and him have a lot in common in that like we're both clearly addicted to gambling to some extent. But the idea of like getting that competitive with that just really didn't resonate with me. And even the other day I'm out riding bikes and one of these kids is like, hey, like they're shooting dice. They play dice all the time. Mm-hmm. And like the one kid's asking me to do it and I'm like, nah, I'm cool. He's like, well, I thought you got all this money. I'm like, yeah, but I don't want to play a fucking break-even game with you guys sitting here. I'm like, it just doesn't appeal to me,
Yeah. No, actually, this game that Michael Jordan was playing with the $2, throwing it at the wall, we were playing this also at the airport when we were waiting for a flight. We had to overnight stay, and we actually made a whole competition, like playing mini games, and I think the winner was supposed to serve the other one for 24 hours. We had to, connection flight. So whenever, he had to clean up your table, he had to get the food for you. Of course, not exploiting it too much, but that was the price. And even though if it's a game where luck is supposed to be the determined factor, I just love looking for an edge. It's like people would tell me, Ben, this is a break-even game. I would still try. There has to be an edge. There has to be something that people have overseen. I think this is more the motivation for me to prove people wrong. And then,
yeah, because I immediately started to think that when I was watching them play dice, as I was thinking like, I bet that I could get them to agree to terms of the rules of the dice game that wouldn't seem terrible to them, but that would seem really, really disadvantageous to me. And that, I just haven't looked into it enough, but I'm sure that like, if you're basically like, if you were to even just warp it so that there's like one additional, I don't know, like maybe you're staking them. No, I don't want to stake them because I'm never going to get money from them. I don't know, but there's got to be like some good ways to get an edge there. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not necessarily about the outcome that I find the edge, but I just find it so fulfilling, and maybe I'm getting a little horny at it, just looking for the edge, just that process of, hey, maybe let's figure it out. And my girlfriend sometimes gets really mad, not mad, but a little annoyed. You have these little like metal constructions that they're very popular, like these little how they're called, like there's some sort of metal constructions and they're entangled in a certain way and you have to resolve it. It's like a puzzle. Yeah, these puzzle things. And she, after 5 minutes, let's look it up. Let's look for it. It's like, no, there has to be a way. Like, she's probably still better at it right now. Like, she solved more than I did. But still, I just, there has to be a way. Or these escape games. She's like, let's go for it. Let's go for it. Let's look for another 2 minutes. I don't know. Just
on that topic, there's a YouTube channel that I got obsessed with for a few months of this guy, Chris Ramsey, who is a puzzle guy. And some of the puzzles that he puts together on his YouTube channel, like every video on his channel is him just taking apart one of these crazy puzzles.
Yeah, I think I've seen as well.
The things they do with puzzles, like they have to shake it to make it unlock. And like, it's the most mind-blowing thing ever, because I'll be watching this guy just thinking like, I would have gave up in 5 seconds on getting this thing apart.
And
like,
it's
I just
even super hard, right?
Just thinking that outside the box about how to do these things was just so mind-blowing to me when I first found that channel.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I haven't watched it in a while. Maybe it was a different channel, but there was also a guy like super custom made, like $10,000 expensive puzzles. highest, hardest level, like unbeatable, and this guy, let's do this, and that, and he solves it in like an hour, and
Yeah.
it's insane. Yeah, I would definitely not have that patience either.
Yeah, that's just this is just a degree of yeah, like if I'm problem solving something and I feel like I'm just not making any progress, I have such a tendency to just kind of like give up and just get frustrated, and that's probably not a good thing for people who want to take apart extremely complicated puzzles. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Well, there are things we're good at, there are things that we're not so good at, and that's just how it is. You were talking about Michael Jordan. You said that's something you did not resonate with. What did you resonate the most with? Because I find it it's an incredible documentary, and if whoever is watching, if you haven't watched it yet, and if you feel like some extra, motivation, I can highly recommend it. But what was it for you that you resonated the most with?
I mean, I think that when I saw the way that he was willing to sort of like manufacture reasons to be angry at the other team or the other players, that just really said a lot to me, because I've always noticed that I do the best business wise or whatever when I feel like I have something that I'm fighting against. And if you get like I've also been in business where I felt like I had a competitor, and then I felt like the competitor just completely gave up, and all of a sudden it was like basically me being the only person in that space, and it feels very different than when you're trying to beat somebody. And yeah, that just sort of like seemed really important to me, because I think Michael like understood inherently that he wasn't going to really be able to perform at his best unless he created a reason for him to care so much. And it's like, this is a certain degree of passion like that it's hard to hold on to. Like I'm sure that if you felt like if you didn't kill it in poker this year, that you were going to like basically die or lose your entire livelihood, that you would play poker like a motherfucker in a way, or like a level of motivation that you probably just don't have right now, because you've managed to get comfortable to a certain extent. But if you felt like there was just this reason why you had to kill it poker wise, and obviously poker kind of sucks as an example for this because there is so much variance that you just don't control. But yeah, that just having like that animosity to keep you going is pretty important, I think.
Yeah. I also have to say, though, that it's double rewarding because, first of all, you kill your competitors and you also kill the variance. So, winning a big tournament the next couple of days, it just feels amazing. But interesting fact, do you also think it works the opposite? Have you incorporated the other way, that you're a little bit more careful the way you speak about your competitors, so you don't want to poke the bear, so to speak? Or is it just something, whatever, like whatever happens, I'm going to outwork everyone?
Yeah, no, definitely. When I was doing the BMX blog website thing, I mean, I just antagonized my competitors to a crazy degree. Like I would just like insult them like constantly, and just really have this like extremely negative approach towards my competitors. And to be honest, when I look back on it, it was pretty untoward. Like I really don't think I was doing myself many favors in terms of like how people were viewing me publicly, primarily because my website was just fucking everybody else up so bad that it wasn't even like a fair fight. Like I had gotten into that market super early, and I had just like been doing such a good job doing it that probably like when a new video came out, like if there was going to be 100,000 views, probably like 90,000 of those views were coming from my website at that point when I was looking at the analytics. And instead of just like allowing that balance to exist and just sort of continuing on with having a good thing going for myself, I really like took it upon myself to just sort of like inform everybody else of how dominant I was. And it's just like when I look at that now, I'm like, I don't really like court the negativity anymore. And there's certainly like value in being the loud, crazy, loudmouth fucking dude who just sort of is always the topic of conversation because he always has the craziest take and he always has the most negative thing to say. And so everybody's always talking about you. I mean, there is some value in that if you want to be the person who's just known for being the most boisterous. But if you want to like run a business and like, I very much see the value in keeping my head down and just allowing myself to work. Every day there's something I see on Twitter that I feel like saying something, and then I sort of check myself, and I'm like, if you say that, your Twitter is going to be a war for the next day. So
Yeah.
maybe just forget about it.
Yeah. It distracts you, right? It distracts you from the important things, running your business. And I just don't think it's worth poking the bear. So for me, it's, we also have people that don't necessarily agree with us. But if they poke us, well, not a good
Yeah,
idea.
because
I just feel more motivated.
you could probably think of someone in poker that you don't like, or that you think is a scumbag, or that you think that their content sucks or whatever, and you could go on Twitter right now and just say, this dude sucks. This dude, whatever, like I hate this fool. And like, then Bencb is the talk of Twitter for the day. But I mean, is that really gonna, like, even if you were like saying something that you believe, I mean, is it really like beneficial to just sort of like create a brand for yourself of just
Not
sort
really,
of
yeah.
being negative and stuff? I think for some people that actually is what they like. I know people who have basically built big businesses for themselves off of just being the most controversial commentator.
Yeah.
But I don't really think it's if you're not choosing to live your life that way, then it's kind of, I think it's probably negative EV.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's also a difference between controversial and just being negative, isn't it? I mean, you can still deliver value by being controversial and polarizing, right? And being the loudest doesn't mean that that's necessarily bad. I mean, we can also be loud about certain things, but we still try to, add some value. I certainly also have very polarizing, controversial opinion about playing poker. Not many agree with me with my more exploitative approach towards poker than the more GTO approved poker, but it's just how it is. And I try to, teach what I believe in instead of trying to teach what other people consider as good. And I just have a different opinion on that. And that's great about poker because it's just still so incomplete and unsolved that many styles work its way. And when you look at the reviews at YouTube, you see all these crazy high stakes motherfuckers playing so many different styles, and it works, right? So there's a lot of room to try out things and pick your lines. I mean, there's for sure basics and fundamental laws that you need to obey to, but then you have so many different spots where you can call, you can 3-bet, you can go all in, and all options are viable. And then it's up to you what style you want to follow. What do you think you're going to be performing best, and make your opponents also maybe putting in uncomfortable situations. That's what I love about poker, and I hope it always will remain as such.
Yeah, I love, like, one thing that, there weren't bounty tournaments when I used to play back in the day, and I fucking love studying those kind of spots because there's just so much to consider. And then we didn't talk about ICM a lot when I was playing back then. And, I remember when it started to kind of become more of a thing that everybody was talking about. But I mean, those factors are just so endlessly fascinating to me. And, I find like a lot of times the real extreme ICM situations are the things that I could send to a couple of different pros that I know and get completely different answers. And that's pretty, if you ever have any doubt about how fascinating poker still is, I think that says a lot when you can send a hand to like 3 experts and get 3 different answers.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We still have the same debate when we review hands. Like some of the best players in the world, when they give me feedback, like, they have complete different opinions on hands. I think this just shows how much room of individualism is there in poker and playing your own style.
Facts.
Yo, listen, Adam. Last question before we wrap it up, and I already want to say big thank you for you to taking the time. I think it was incredibly valuable. But before we wrap it up, one more question: what means freedom to you?
Freedom. I mean, to me, it's really, at this point, it's just about, building the life that you want to live, and being able to, wake up in the morning and feel like you have control over your situation and your destiny. And I think that in a lot of ways, I've kind of found that through becoming successful at business. But the thing that has that's made me realize is just how hollow just making a bunch of money is for how you want to live your life, and that, you know, real freedom is, you know, having connections with people and having people in your life that you give a fuck about enough that they can really, you know, move your heart rate. You know, like I feel it so much with my daughter that, like, just for an example, like, you know, yesterday I'm playing with her. She's 4.5 months, just for anybody who's aware of what that might be like. But I'm rolling her on the ground. Like, I just put her on her tummy and then she flips back to her back. And we did it like 3-4 times. And on the last one, when I rolled her back, she just looks at me and just starts crying her fucking eyes out. And I was just like, I felt so horrible, even though I really hadn't done anything wrong. It was just basically she was kind of cranky and she needed a nap. But like the way that I felt right then, even though I felt really bad about it, it just like that kind of made me realize how much feeling I'm going to do through the process of having this kid. And, you know, just how many different things I'm going to feel that I like would never have felt in terms of, you know, good feelings and bad feelings. And I'm just, you know, I think life is, people tend to really, really underrate the value of those real personal connections, you know, and I just am trying to find ways to do more of that. Like, I just want to call my friends from back home more and just talk about random shit and stuff. I feel like at a certain point, having so many eyeballs on me with doing the podcast and stuff really made me closed off to just having normal human experiences. And I'm trying to like really break out of that if I want to be the better version of myself, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, makes a lot of sense, man. Thank you so much for sharing. I can very much relate to that. I feel like once we, I don't want to say mastered something, but we're really looking for that simplicity, for those just, you know, chilled moments and just, you know, enjoying the people around us and just have those meaningful relationships, right?
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah,
I
man,
appreciate you having me on, man. It was a big honor.
It was a great talk. It was a really great talk. I really appreciate that you did not shy away from going a little deeper and sharing some more sensitive stuff. I hope this will be very valuable to any of our listeners. Before I release you, where can our listeners find you online? I know you have YouTube, you have the No Jumper channel, you have the Adam22 channel. Anywhere else where you can find you? Instagram, Twitter, right? We're going to put all the socials on in the description, but if you have anything else that you wish to share, what is worth checking out, just feel free to share.
Yeah, pretty much you can search No Jumper or Adam22 on on pretty much any social network. And then also, very important, I stream on Twitch. So if anybody wants to catch me live on one of my rare streaming sessions, which happens from time to time, Twitch is where that tends to happen at. So.
Also on the Adam22, right? So everyone listening, make sure to follow you on Twitch. So whenever you go online, you get a notification. And pretty sure we're also gonna be doing something together, some poker content, maybe, you know, reviewing some stuff.
I'm gonna start marking some hands for you for sure. That
be
would be fun. And you know,
and
I gotta just send massive shout out to BBZ, because that was really what like helped me really get going on becoming a better poker player. And I'm just massively thankful for everything they've done for me.
Yeah, I also, for everyone maybe who has missed it, I also had a podcast with John here on this channel. So check it out if you would like to see more about his approach on poker. I think it's definitely worth a watch. So Adam, thank you so much for joining. All the best,
for the record,
man. Yeah,
I never feel more like I don't know what I'm doing poker wise than when I've watched you and him review a hand together, because you guys get so deep into the weeds that it's just that is just a constant reminder of like, wow, you still got a long ass way to go here.
I take that as a compliment, but I also take it as some hidden criticism that I try to be more simple and a bit more easy in my language, so people don't feel lost.
No, yeah, I feel you, but you know, fuck it, this is poker. If you're not ready, get the hell out.
Get the hell out. Now it's our time to get out. Thank you so much, Adam. Bye-bye.
Appreciate you, Ben. Thanks so much, man.